will truly see now who this Jesus is who's going to the cross. And so now look what happens in verses 4 through 6. Verses 4 through 6. Then Jesus, knowing all that would happen to him, came forward and said to them, "Whom do you seek?" They answered him, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus said to them, "I am he." Judas, who betrayed him, was standing with them. When Jesus said to them, "I am he," they drew back and fell to the ground. So to begin on those verses, just look again at how John begins in verse 4, because it's fascinating. So Jesus is about to be betrayed. And to these disciples, this was a surprise. But what about to Jesus? Well, John clearly writes, "Then Jesus, knowing all that would happen to him." In other words, our Lord knows exactly what's about to happen. And so what does happen? Well, notice first, Jesus is the one who initiates the conversation. He doesn't run from this mob. Instead, he initiates talking to them. And what does he say? Well, he says, "Whom do you seek?" And then hearing that, they respond with Jesus of Nazareth. And all that makes sense because remember, it's kind of dark and a lot of these soldiers probably didn't know exactly what Jesus looked like. And so they answer Jesus' questions. But then, what happens next is the clear climax of this section. So they ask that. And remember, Jesus initiated this conversation, but why? Well, all so that he could answer and show them, and so that Jesus could show us who he truly is. Because how does Jesus answer them? Verse 5, they answered him, "Jesus of Nazareth." Jesus said to them, "I am." And I know in the ESV it does add the word he to try to make it less awkward sounding in English, but literally in Greek it is not "I am he." Instead, as you can see in the footnote if you're reading the ESV, Jesus just literally says the words, "I am." Ego eimi, I am. And this is a huge deal because that is the same exact Greek phrase that they used to translate when God emphatically talked to Moses at the burning bush. Ego eimi, I am. And so Jesus says that. And because of that, what happens? Verse 6, when he said to them, "I am," they drew back and fell to the ground. And that is an incredible scene in church. That's then who this Jesus is who's going to the cross. And now again, I know for most of us, we probably know that. Right? And here in John's gospel, John himself has already told us that from the first paragraph in this whole book, right? Where he says that Jesus is the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word is God. And so we know Jesus is the I am. And yet still, I do think that when we think of Jesus' cross, that is so hard for us to grasp. Because we can think that Jesus was mainly just a victim. Or worse, we can assume that Jesus was subject to the whims of Judas or Pilate or the crowds. But he ultimately wasn't. Instead, when all of this really all starts to go down, Jesus himself goes out of his way here to prove who he is. And who is he? He is the I am, willingly going to the cross.